morning. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Facebook live stream. So excellent. We've had some technical issues with getting this to work this morning, but I'm very pleased to see that it appears to now be working. So that's excellent. I will take your questions as you send them through on our chat screen. So, okay. So for those who don't know me, thank you for our regulars joining us as always. It's delightful to see you. And for new people who are joining us this morning, my name's Bron Pearson. I'm from Pinnacle People Solutions, and welcome to our daily Facebook Live update. We've been doing this now for, I think tomorrow will be 5 weeks, actually, which is very exciting. We made the decision to try and cut through all of the screeds of information and updates and so forth that were coming every 24 hours or sometimes even more frequently about COVID-19 and its impacts for employers and employees. So every day we, at 9:15, we're doing a live stream through Facebook, which is then saved into our Facebook page and also our YouTube channel and LinkedIn. And we're giving updates on new information and more detailed information in respect of topics related to staffing and business management. So our company, Pinnacle People Solutions, provides human resource services, advice, support to regionally based small to medium enterprises and not-for-profit organisations. We're here to help you through these challenging COVID times, and you'll find us here at 9:15 every weekday morning. So please ask any questions that you might have as we go along this morning, and I'll do my best to answer them. I've had some questions on notice that I will be covering today. Outside of this, of course, you can always contact us, my fantastic team or myself, via Facebook. You can private message us. You can put questions up in the chat screen, of course. And I'm sure my team are going to give you the contact details that you can reach us directly via email, phone, social media, etc. So today, some breaking news, changes that have happened since Monday, because of course yesterday we had our wonderful consultant psychologist Jess talking about some good psychological health strategies to cope with having to make those really tough decisions as business owners through this time. So thank you so much, Jess, for your wonderful strategies and suggestions yesterday. If you've got any questions for Jess, please send them through, and she will answer them for you. And she, of course, is appearing in our Facebook live streams regularly every Tuesday morning. So put that in your diary, and she'll look forward to seeing you again next week. So changes that have come in or been announced since Monday this week. First of all, in New South Wales, for those of us in New South Wales, from this Friday, we're no longer restricted to one person visiting another person's household. We can now have 2 people visit another's household. So that will be a bit exciting to be able to do that, obviously still with social distancing in place when you do visit someone else's household. And of course, we're all cautioned against making visits to friends or family who might be immunocompromised or over 70 or have other potential vulnerabilities. So we all still need to be really sensible, because this could get out of hand so quickly if we don't. So, but that's good news for New South Wales from Friday. The other good news, and this is specifically for business owners, is that the ATO Commissioner has extended the enrolment for a JobKeeper from the 30th of April, which is tomorrow, through to the 31st of May. So that's really good news as well. So you've got a little bit more time in respect of that. My advice would still be to get your enrolment in ASAP, ideally by tomorrow, because it means that you'll be getting, if you're eligible for April, from the time that the program came in on the 30th of March, my apologies, then you're likely to get your reimbursements much faster. So get in and do that enrolment as soon as you can. I just want to remind you, I did mention this on Monday because the announcement was made on Friday night, but just a reminder because it is really quite important that on Friday evening after the meeting of the National Cabinet on Friday afternoon, the Prime Minister did unveil new workplace safety principles. Now, the 10 principles have been agreed by the National Cabinet of state, territory and federal governments, and they have been developed in response specifically to COVID-19. They're intended to try and provide some national consistency for COVID-19 work safety while recognising, of course, that states and territories have their own jurisdictions for work health and safety. We will put up the connections to the PM's press release and also the Safe Work Australia link where you can see those principles. We might actually do a special topic on those next week. We've had a few questions. I've got a question to deal with today in terms of work health and safety that's come through. So we might actually do a preview, not a preview, a deep dive into that potentially next week. So the other thing I would also repeat from Monday is that we've had the New South Wales government announce a $395 million stimulus package for local governments, for councils, which is fantastic. Obviously, local governments have not been able to access the federal government initiatives, and so it's been down to state governments to look at what initiatives they can introduce to help local governments, including their employees, services, etc. $112.5 million of that, almost $400 million, will be allocated to maintain council jobs, and we'll keep you informed as to what this means in reality for relevant regional local government areas and how it unravels. So watch this space. JobKeeper, you know about. One of the other things that has been developed over the weekend, which is a very recent announcement. We did mention it in brief on Monday. I want to mention it again still today, is that the ATO has set out alternative tests for businesses to be able to demonstrate a fall in turnover, and including for those who've been drought impacted. So one of the things that a lot of our clients were saying was, well, it's a bit hard to compare 2020 to 2019 because we haven't had normal income since 2018 or 2017 because of drought and bushfire impacts. So the good news is that where a business is affected by drought or another natural disaster, that an alternative test has been developed and will be applied. So if you thought you may not have been eligible for JobKeeper, please talk to us or talk to your accountant, and let's see what you have access to, because you might have thought that this wasn't going to be possible, and now very well may be. So, and you've got that extra time to the 31st of May. So give us a call and we can walk you through that. So today's topic is what has COVID-19 revealed to us about the vulnerabilities of our businesses, and what can we do about them for the future. I'm not going to be able to go into all the vagaries of vulnerabilities that we've seen across clients and our audiences that have been getting in touch with us and asking a multitude of questions. So I've tried to condense it down to the fundamental ones that we're seeing time and time again at the moment. So some of those vulnerabilities, and where I can, I'll give you some de-identified examples of where we've seen this to date in businesses' response to the COVID-19 pandemic. What we do know and what we're seeing all over the place, and I can speak to this as a business owner myself, is that our ways of working have had to be turned on their head. And we cannot rely on business as usual. We've had to pivot. We are continuing to have to pivot, and to do so quickly. And one thing we do know for certain, in a situation and a set of circumstances that are have been and continue to be very uncertain. What we do know for certain is this won't be the only crisis that we have to deal with. So the learnings that we can take from this as business owners in terms of the way that we manage our businesses, the vulnerabilities that might inherently exist in our businesses, hopefully those vulnerabilities for most have been able to be navigated or are being able to be navigated. For some businesses, it has meant the end of their business, and the very remote likelihood that they'd be able to reinvigorate, which is very sad, and that's what's pushing our unemployment figures in the way that it has. But for those that are still hanging on, we know that our ways of working have had to be turned on their head, and that business as usual is no longer business as usual. And we have to be prepared moving forward for our businesses to be able to pivot and be flexible. And there's a whole lot of things that we need to get in place to ensure that we can do that as quickly and as meaningfully as possible. So for a lot of businesses that we have spoken to, and I know for others that have communicated with us, a lot of us as business owners have realised that what we need in terms of staff skills, attributes and experience is not necessarily what we've got in our team or what we need indeed to take our businesses forward. We've worked with a range of different businesses in the last couple of months that have had to lose staff, make positions in their staff team redundant, and a number of those have exited staff who are not going to meet the skills, attributes and experience brief that the business needs in order to move forward. And in some cases, they've moved, they've made positions redundant with staff who have actively been holding the business back. So COVID-19 has actually given business owners an opportunity to look very, hard and long at their current team composition and what they are going to need for this period and to move through and out the other end, and then to stay flexible and adaptable moving forward, because as I mentioned, this isn't the only crisis that we're going to have as businesses moving forward. So we've had a number of businesses where we've helped them with all of their obligations, which I've mentioned in previous live streams regarding stand downs, regarding redundancies, etc., the consultation obligations, all of those things to make sure that those businesses are doing all of the things that they're required to do, and can at the same time really position their businesses with their best foot forward to get through this process and to move forward. One of the other things that has become really clear as a vulnerability for a lot of businesses that this COVID pandemic has exposed is where businesses don't have backups in place for their critical business processes. And these businesses that have faced this has exposed those businesses to big risks. Now, I'm talking, say, critical business processes might be, getting accounts out, sending out invoices, payroll. They're the immediate ones that occur to me in terms of critical business processes. But depending on your industry or your profession and the kind of work that you or products and services that you deliver, you will have necessarily different critical business processes. And one of the things that has really come to the fore in this time is that a lot of businesses have been vulnerable to the fact that they don't have backup. So their payroll person goes down sick or has to isolate or has to care for somebody else who is vulnerable and can't do their normal business processes, and the business has not ever had the need to that point in time of having a backup for that particular process. And so it's help. Oh my God, how do I actually keep my business operating? staff having to be away who are providers of or processors of critical business processes have actually crippled some businesses. Unfortunately, we've seen that. We had a situation in particular with one business where there was that one of their staff had been exposed to COVID-19 through a family member who had returned from overseas. The business wasn't in a situation where those critical business processes could be done remotely while this person was in isolation. And they had real issues because they also didn't have any procedures or anything in place around those critical business processes. They didn't necessarily have the access to systems that they would have needed. And so it was a pretty dire situation for a couple of weeks for this particular business. They have managed to get through that. But it's been a very hard task for them. So what I think this pandemic has certainly shown us in our need to move quickly and flexibly and to adapt to the ways in which we deliver goods and services has meant that having those good systems and processes in place and the backup for all of your critical business processes is absolutely critical. That's certainly one thing that we are primarily focused on when we go in and help a business to set up their HR sort of structure and make sure that they've got good employment contracts, job descriptions, those sorts of things in place, is to actually have a look at how everybody's roles actually interact with each other in a business and to identify those critical business processes and make sure that even in a very small business that there is adequate backup. So as and when the business does need that. So that has been a real hiccup, well, just a hiccup in some cases, but an almost fall over completely situation for a number of businesses. And good morning to everybody that is joining us this morning. Welcome. Delightful to have you with us as always. Please ask any questions that you have as we go through. The next thing that we have seen repeatedly through this particular process has been that when businesses have been trying to survive and or pivot in terms of how they're going to go about delivery, etc., a lack of business records, employment contracts, policies, procedures for how to do things has compromised their ability to act swiftly and lawfully, leaving them exposed. So we have seen that countless times now where, there's been a bit of a laissez-faire sort of approach, or indeed a business hasn't known what they haven't known in terms of their obligations as an employer under law. And faced with a situation where they have to change business as usual really quickly, whether that's making positions redundant, standing down staff, trying to organise for changes to hours, rates of pay, all of those things with nothing in place, it makes it incredibly difficult to change. So we had one particular business that I'll give you as an example. Well, let me give you a couple as opposite examples. So we've helped a number of businesses who do have employment contracts in place, existing clients that we have helped make sure get those things in place previously. And those who've had employment contracts in place can vary them, either with agreement with their staff members or following consultation via a JobKeeper directive. And in fact, tomorrow I'm going to be talking about the enabling directives that are available under JobKeeper if you believe your business is going to be eligible. It gives you a lot of flexibility during this particular time if you are eligible and you have access to those directives. I'm going to be talking about those tomorrow. We've also got in and tried to help businesses that haven't had any employment contracts or role descriptions for their staff in place at all. And they have been stuck and at significant risk. And in one case, we had a business where staff actually disagreed about their terms and conditions. So we had payroll records, fortunately, to demonstrate what they were being paid on a routine basis, in this case weekly. But in terms of, and a number of these staff were award free, so there were no modern awards to go back to, but there was fundamental disagreement between the staff and the employer about actually what their duties and responsibilities were, and what their terms and conditions of employment had been. It makes it incredibly difficult if those things are not well established to then try and make changes quickly, which a lot of businesses have needed to try to do to change their business as usual in order to survive. So that is an absolute necessity for businesses moving forward, is to get some advice, get expert support, to make sure as a business owner that with that support, you know what you didn't perhaps previously know. You don't inadvertently not meet your obligations, and that you've got good framework and structure in place so that when something like this does happen, and this will not be the first time, that you can pivot quickly. And with advice, you can consult with your staff quickly. You can have changes in place within 24 hours. It doesn't have to take a huge amount of time, but if you've got that infrastructure in place, it is much more straightforward, and you're not going to get waylaid with disagreements, objections, potentially Fair Work Commission intervention, etc. The other thing that I would mention as being a significant vulnerability to businesses during COVID that we've seen is businesses do not understand in some cases, and therefore haven't complied. They either haven't understood and haven't complied, or they have understood but still haven't complied with their work health and safety obligations. So we have helped one particular business. We've helped a myriad at the moment, but one in particular who actually had a staff member who had been exposed to COVID-19 in the course of doing work on a job site, not at their business headquarters, but on a job site. So under the health and safety legislation, wherever somebody is doing work for you as an employer, they are covered by work health and safety and workers' compensation provisions. You are responsible for ensuring their health and safety wherever they are doing work for you, whether that's in a customer or a client's home or place of business, wherever it might happen to be. This particular person was exposed to somebody in a household that they were doing work in on behalf of their employer. Fortunately, the testing of that staff member has since come back negative, but of course the whole process then had to be put in place very, very quickly because this business had not done anything about ensuring that they were meeting their health and safety obligations. So they were immediately at risk, and so was the staff member, and so was the other staff that they had actually had contact with since having this exposure. So we had to put in place a whole process for, and very quickly for that business, but they were already at significant risk had this person tested positive because they had no health and safety obligations that they had met. So there was nothing that they could provide to an authority to say that they had mitigation strategies in place. They'd respond. We could help them respond, but it's incredibly important to have those things in place. So that brings us to the question of what can we do about these vulnerabilities for the future? First and foremost, make sure that you're meeting your lawful requirements as employers, and make sure that you have the requisite record keeping in place, policy in place to minimise your risk. I can't tell you how significant that is and how significant this has been demonstrated during this COVID process, because when a business needs to pivot quickly, it's going to be able to do that the most efficiently and effectively and with minimal risk and context and complication to the business if they've got all of their ducks in a row. So you need to have robust employment contracts, job role descriptions. What that means is that terms and conditions and expectations are absolutely clear between you and your staff and your team, and you can pivot quickly and when needed. So I'll give you an example of a couple of businesses that we've helped who have had their ducks in a row, and they're actually clients of ours that we've been working with for over 12 months. So they'd had all of their ducks in a row when this hit. We were able to help one business with stand downs, with graduated return of staff, with eligibility for JobKeeper, and maximising the flexibilities that were built into their employment contracts and that were available to them, not only in terms of JobKeeper, but also in terms of their modern award provisions. You're looking at individual flexibility agreements and things like that, to actually help them adjust their businesses as time has gone on through this process. The other businesses that we've assisted is, well, as I said, there's been many, but this particular one, we've actually assisted them to undertake contract reductions for a temporary period with their staff. Now, again, contracts are already in place, so it's simply a case of consulting with the staff, getting their agreement and doing contract variations. For this particular business, they're unsure as to whether they'll be eligible for JobKeeper, certainly not for April, possibly moving forward from May. And so this was a consultation and modification to contract process that has been done outside of JobKeeper. So in accordance with the consultation provisions in the modern awards that apply, but we were able to do that within 48 hours to have those changes in place. Do the consultation, get agreement, ask and answer staff queries, etc., and get that in place. So it can happen nice and fast. You don't have to be waiting around for a long time, but it makes such a difference to have all of that infrastructure in place. The other thing I would say in terms of preparing for the future is knowing the skills, attributes, and experience of your team, being really well aware of what that looks like. And what you will need in those areas moving forward to take your business past COVID-19. And this is where workforce planning comes in. So I think I've mentioned in a previous live stream that there's no point planning the equivalent in your business of circumnavigating the globe if the only thing you're equipped to do that in is a tinny with a two-stroke motor. So you need to actually be really well aware of the skills, attributes, and experience of your team and what you're going to need during and post COVID-19 in order to prepare your business. We've helped businesses do skills audits, and those things also, again, to be done, very quickly. They can also demonstrate why a business would choose to bring some staff back, potentially make others redundant, etc. It's a demonstrated, tool that can then be used if there are any disputes or issues that then might arise down the track. So the practical realities moving forward are ensure you have good, robust employment contracts, role descriptions, policies and procedures in place. When you've got step-by-step capacity, you can do that so much more quickly. Make sure your staff are really clear about their entitlements and obligations. That comes through having that infrastructure in place. Establish clear expectations. It's very hard to change expectations if you end up in a dispute about what those have already been to this point in time. And if you're unsure, ask us. We'd be delighted to help you. We're here to help. We're here to make sure that you meet your obligations as employers in the same way that your tax accountant makes sure that you're meeting your tax obligations. So that's what we're here for. I realise I'm a couple of minutes over, but we did start 3 minutes late. So I hope you'll give me a little bit of latitude. I haven't had any questions yet come up in the chat screen, but I have had someone notice that I'm going to answer. First of all, one of the questions we had this last week, which we've had a number of times in the last weeks, is what are my health and safety obligations? Well, the relevant work health and safety laws, and they differ from state to state, require you as the employer to make sure, as far as you reasonably can, that the health and safety of your staff and others in your workplace is sound. So you must have measures in place to eliminate and to identify, eliminate, and manage risks associated with coronavirus. So talk to us if you need more support in relationship to that. But you absolutely have obligations in terms of health and safety, and specific obligations, and now 10 more new principles, as announced by the Prime Minister on Friday evening, to do with health and safety. So talk to us if you need support with that. One of the other questions we've had is how long can a JobKeeper direction last? Now, tomorrow I'm actually going to be doing a special topic on the JobKeeper enabling directions. So we'll be doing a deep dive into that tomorrow. But a JobKeeper enabling stand down direction continues in effect until it's withdrawn or revoked by you as the employer. It's replaced by a new JobKeeper enabling direction. So you change the direction from, direction A to direction B. There's an order given by the Fair Work Commission that requires it to be removed or withdrawn, or there is no further JobKeeper payment. So at the moment, the JobKeeper wage subsidy will be in place until the 27th of September. So any JobKeeper directive that you give lawfully, and you need to make sure it's lawful, under the JobKeeper program would only be in place then until the 27th of September at this point. Unless it's withdrawn by you or replaced with something else, or the Fair Work Commission requires you to remove it. Are the changes that have been made to the Fair Work Act permanent? No, they're not. So the amendments to the Fair Work Act that have been made are intended to be temporary and will be reviewed at the start of July. Starting at the end of July, not starting in July, starting at the end of July. Another question that we've had is, when can I stand down a staff member? If you're standing down a staff member and you're going to be eligible for the JobKeeper payment, the changes to the Fair Work Act mean that you can stand down a staff member without pay, either completely or partially, for any period that they can't be usefully employed. And that's called the JobKeeper stand down enabling direction, which I'll talk more about tomorrow. There actually needs to be cause for a stoppage of work that you as an employer cannot be held responsible for before you can stand someone down. Unless there is a stoppage and no useful work, you can't stand someone down. So let me give you an example of an organisation. So let's project forward. This is based on an organisation we've been working with. So let's project forward to June 2020. And let's say that we've got a retail shop that's been hit hard by COVID-19. Sales are down 40%. But so far, to that point in time, the government hasn't instituted a close down like those that exist, for example, in Spain and Italy. You've cut all of your casual staff hours and you're now unsure whether you can keep the door open. So your permanent staff have exhausted all their leave, allowing you to run a skeleton roster for a period. So having some customers is good, but it's not enough to keep you going. Question, can you shut the business and stand down the staff without pay? This is actually a really tricky example. I'm going to tide you over and give you the rest of this tomorrow. So I'll repeat this and then give you the rest tomorrow. You'll likely be able to implement a stand down at some point in this situation, but given the potential and somewhat significant ramifications of getting a stand down direction wrong, you would be advised to exercise extreme caution and call us for specific advice. But I'm going to dive into that in a little bit more detail tomorrow. So I have gone over the time again today, my apologies, by a few minutes. I haven't had any questions in the chat screen, but feel free to communicate with us in the range of forms that my staff have let you know about how to contact us if you do have questions. Tomorrow, I'm going to be going through a case study of applying JobKeeper enabling directions. So tomorrow, we're going to do a deep dive into the enabling directions that are available under the JobKeeper scheme. So whether or not you, even at this stage, you think you're eligible, join us for tomorrow because that will give you some really good information. What I will be focused on is the do's and don'ts and the possibilities and the pitfalls. So please invite your friends and colleagues to join us. All of these live streams, of course, are recorded and then available up in Facebook, on YouTube, and also in LinkedIn after the event. So in the meantime, please hug the people that you can, wave cheerily at those that you can't, and stay home, stay safe, wash your hands, and I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you so much.